There's a moment in every revenge story that feels like pure electricity. It's the moment the plan comes together. The moment you finally get to say what you really think. The moment they feel exactly what you felt. And in that exact second, something happens in your brain that is almost indistinguishable from taking a hit of a drug. That is not a metaphor. That is neuroscience. Your brain has a reward center called the striatum. Sitting right next to it is the nucleus accumbens, the exact same circuit that lights up when someone wins a bet, takes a drag from a cigarette, or gets a like on a post they were anxious about. When you imagine getting even with someone who wronged you, functional MRI scans show that these areas flood with dopamine. Your brain is not processing justice. It is processing pleasure. It is scrambling to rebalance your pain with a hit of something that feels like power, clarity, and purpose all at once. But just like any addictive cycle, the high does not last. It spurs you to fantasize more heavily, to escalate further, to chase that same feeling again and again. Revenge isn't just emotionally satisfying in the moment. It is neurologically addictive. But here's the trap that almost nobody sees coming. The people who actually act on revenge do not feel better afterward. They feel worse. In study after study, participants who punish a wrongdoer report more prolonged anger and resentment than those who choose not to. They ruminate more. They think about the offender more, not less. The wound stays open because the mind keeps replaying the story, searching for a resolution that punishment alone cannot provide. Sir Francis Bacon figured this out 4 centuries ago when he wrote that a person who studies revenge keeps his own wounds green, which otherwise would heal and do well. Modern psychology has simply confirmed what he already knew. The reason is rumination. Rumination is the mental habit of replaying painful events, and it is one of the most destructive psychological patterns a human being can fall into. Every time you think about the person who hurt you or what you did in return, you reopen the emotional wound. You re-experience the anger, the humiliation, and the sense of injustice that first triggered the desire to retaliate. Research shows that rumination predicts depression levels 6 months down the line, even when you control for every other factor. It worsens anxiety, amplifies anger, and is directly linked to suicidal ideation and post-traumatic stress. When you take revenge, you do not remove the other person from your life. You give them a permanent role in your mental landscape. You tie yourself to them with a rope you forged yourself. And then there is the magnitude gap. This is the difference in how victims and perpetrators perceive harm. To you, the original offense was deeply personal and significant. To them, it was minor or easily explained away. When you strike back, you see your response as fair and proportionate, but they experience it as excessive and unjust. They now feel wronged in turn, and they look for a way to even the score. The cycle continues, with each side convinced they are defending fairness, while the other is escalating the conflict. This is why revenge almost never ends with one act. It is not a period at the end of a sentence. It is a comma in a story that never stops writing itself. So, why does it feel so good in the moment? Because your brain is running software from the Ice Age. The neurochemistry of revenge evolved to stop people from stealing your mate or the food you needed to survive the winter. It was designed for life or death threats. But today, we seek revenge for threats to our egos, for social slights, for comments online, for things that have zero survival consequence. Your ancient brain does not know the difference. It treats a public humiliation the exact same way it would treat a predator stealing your kill. It floods you with dopamine and tells you to fight back. But the modern world does not reward that impulse. It punishes it. This is where the conversation usually shifts to forgiveness. And this is where people start tuning out, because they think forgiveness is about being the bigger person. It is not. Forgiveness is not a moral virtue. It is a selfish act of self-preservation. When you forgive, you are not saying what happened was okay. You are not inviting the person back into your life. You are not even doing it for them. You are doing it because you are tired of carrying the weight. You are doing it because every minute you spend thinking about them is a minute you are not spending on yourself. You are doing it because the neurological and psychological cost of holding onto resentment is far higher than the cost of letting it go. The research on this is overwhelming. Forgiveness is associated with lower blood pressure, better sleep, reduced cortisol, improved immune function, and a decreased risk of cardiovascular problems. In a longitudinal study of over 54,000 female nurses, higher forgiveness levels were linked to increased positive emotion, stronger social connection, and significant reductions in depression and anxiety. Forgiveness training has been shown to reduce anger, shame, and psychological distress in populations ranging from college students to combat veterans to grieving parents. It is not soft. It is not weak. It is a biological upgrade. And here is the part that should really get your attention. The people who resist the urge to get even often find it much easier to move on. The reason is simple. When you choose not to take revenge, the other person gradually fades from your mental landscape. They lose their power over your thoughts, your mood, your sleep, and your health. When you choose revenge, you hand them a permanent lease in your head. Forgiveness is the eviction notice. But let's be honest about what forgiveness actually requires. It is not a single decision. It is a process. Robert Enright, one of the leading researchers in this field, breaks it down into 4 phases. First, you uncover the emotions and defense mechanisms related to the hurt. You have to actually feel it before you can release it. Second, you make a decision to forgive. This is active, not passive. It requires intention. Third, you do the work of building empathy and compassion, not necessarily for the person who hurt you, but for the situation, for the complexity of human failure, for the reality that people who cause pain are often people who have been in pain themselves. And fourth, you find new meaning in what happened. You let it become part of your story, without letting it define your story. This is why forgiveness is so difficult for people who are stuck in the revenge cycle. Revenge promises closure. It promises that one decisive act will finally make the pain stop. But closure does not come from the outside. It comes from the inside. And the longer you wait for the other person to suffer enough, to apologize enough, or to lose enough, the longer you stay trapped in a loop that is slowly destroying your own mind and body. There's a quote from the Buddhist Pali Canon that describes anger as having a honey tip and a poisoned root. That is exactly what revenge is. The honey tip is the surge of power, the clarity, the sense of purpose you feel when you are mad. The poisoned root is what happens next. Prolonged anger corrodes your health, distorts your thinking, and locks you in patterns of resentment. Over time, just like with addictive substances, the reward diminishes while the harm compounds. Anger starts to own you. You feed it, and in return, it hollows you out. So, the next time someone wrongs you, and your brain starts lighting up with that sweet, electric fantasy of getting even, remember what is actually happening. Your brain is offering you a cheap thrill from a reward circuit that does not care about your long-term well-being. It is offering you dopamine in exchange for your peace of mind. And the price is always higher than it looks. Forgiveness is the bigger, better offer. Not because it is morally superior, because it is neurologically smarter. It is the act of choosing your own mental health over the temporary pleasure of watching someone else suffer. It is the recognition that the best revenge is not getting even. It is getting free. And freedom does not feel like a dopamine hit. It feels like waking up one morning and realizing you have not thought about them in weeks. It feels like your sleep getting deeper. It feels like your blood pressure dropping. It feels like reclaiming the mental real estate they were renting for free. The science is clear. The data is in. Revenge is a drug that stops working. Forgiveness is the medicine that actually cures the disease. The choice is yours. But make no mistake, it is a choice. And it is the most important one you will make for your own brain.